In this video, we're going to take a look at some of the new features of Trimble Business Center Heavy Construction Edition version 3.6. There's a lot of great new features in this release. In this video, we're only going to cover a handful of those. We'll start by looking at the option settings. When I go to my options, I can come in here and I can configure the way that I want Business Center to look and operate, such as what highlight colors I'm using, cursor colors, where my file locations are, and even my external services, as well as many other options. Once I configure those to the way that I'm comfortable with or the way that I like to work with Business Center, I can then go to Manage Options now, and I can export those settings out to an options file. I can save and store those out on my desktop or on a network somewhere. And then the next time with the next release of the software, after I install that, I simply just have to come down to Manage Options and import that file back in, and all my settings and options will be reset the way that I like. This will save time on moving to and adopting to the next version of the software. A couple other little minor enhancements. One to the View tab is when I'm working in a 3D view, and let's say that I come in and I orbit and I get myself all twisted around. There's some presets now that I can just simply come up and toggle, and I can either go to front, back, top, bottom, left, or right. So if I select on top, it sets my view back to top, and I can come back in and orbit myself back around so that I can get to where I want to see and orient my view accordingly. Another feature as far as like viewing objects and stuff is the ability to toggle certain objects off. So in this case, I've got a surface, and instead of going over to my View Filter Manager, I can simply select that surface, right click on it, and select Toggle Visibility. So that'll work on images, other surfaces, and other objects as well. So it just makes it nice and quick and easy. Instead of having to come over here, find and scroll down the surfaces, I can simply select that surface, right click, and toggle the visibility of it. Moving on to some nice data prep and organizational type enhancements is if I go to the Edit feature or Edit tab, we have name objects and relayer objects. So in Business Center, we like to name objects, especially when we're going to stake this data out. So if I was to come in and pick that command, it's going to ask me to select an object, or I'm going to go ahead and pick this lot line here, or this building pad. It's going to ask me for a name. So I can either type in the name that I want it to be, or I can simply select a piece of text. So here I'm going to pick lot 19, and it's named that object to lot 19. You can see it goes right back up to object to name. I pick on the next lot, and I'll pick lot 20. Kind of just work my way down. So you can see that quickly I can rename these objects based off of a text that is actually in the CAD file. In addition to that, I have the relayer objects. So a little bit different than the standardize feature we have, or standardized layer option. This actually lets you select certain objects. So you can see I've got a couple cleanouts that are on the wrong layer. So I'm going to select them. I can select using multiple different options. And then I'm just going to go ahead and set the target layer. So I'm just relayering these objects rather quickly. So I'm just going to come in and set those to my sanitary layer. And when I click OK, they're now relayered to the proper layer that they should be on. Next, we've got some nice CAD enhancements, such as the fillet chamfer command. This has been a often requested command inside of Business Center. So I can either choose fillet or chamfer. I'm going to pick my target lines. So I'm just going to select this line here as an example. It highlights it. I'll pick the next one, and then it's going to ask me for my radius. So I'll just go ahead and put 10. When I hit enter and press apply, it fillets that particular corner. I can do the same thing over on this one, and I can trim it or not trim it, change the radius or leave the radius the way it is. If I select chamfer, it lets me do a 1 distance chamfer, a 2 distance chamfer, or a distance and angle. So it's a similar process. I pick the 2 lines that I want. So if I pick this one and this one, and then enter in a distance, it chamfers at 1 distance. If I did the 2 distances, be a similar process. I'm going to pick the first line, which is going to be the 10. I'm going to pick the second line, which will be the 5. And then I will apply that, and it will chamfer the one leg back 10 feet or 10 units, and this one 5 units. go ahead and undo that. Another simple enhancement, this one under data prep, is for the change elevation command. So I can use the absolute elevation or the delta elevation or undefined elevation, but now I have the ability to select surface elevation. So what I can do here is I can also put a delta elevation, so it'll set it to the surface and then adjust it accordingly. So if I wanted these to be 1 foot above the surface, I could maybe set that to 1, pick my surface, and then select my objects. So if I wanted to, I could come in and pick these objects now and select apply, and they're going to be 1 foot higher than the surface at that location. So if I was to come in here and we were to take a look, we got 809. If we look at the properties of that, or 809, you can see it's 801.9. Therefore, it's been raised up a little bit higher, or a foot higher than the surface elevation at that location. Next, most or well requested command is the variable offset command. So if I go to CAD, I've got a variable offset line. So unlike the offset line where I can offset a line at a distance and an elevation, this one lets me offset it with a variable distance. So if I was to come in here, it's going to create a new line, so it wants me to name it. That's another new feature. I can simply select the object here, and it's going to use the name of that object to name this object. We'll go ahead and set this on a layer, so let's go ahead and put this on let's just go with the DTM ditch, because that's what we're putting in. We want to turn that on. And then it's going to ask us for the line to offset. So we're going to offset this building pad here, and we're going to do it, we can either do it with an elevation, we can do a 2D, or we can do a cross slope. And you'll see we can also do a smooth transition. So let's start with a cross slope, and we'll pick this line. I'm going to select that line there. It's going to ask me for the location. So let's say that I want to start here, and the cross slope is going to be -2. So we're putting in a ditch. And you can see it puts in the information there, shows your elevation and your distance. So then if I was to come down here, maybe want this one to be a little bit farther away from the back corner, I can select that, and maybe want that to be a -3%, and I can do that there. Now if I was to hit smooth, you can see that it smooths that line out and makes it a smoother transition between the two. And I can continue that down the line. So variable offset, a lot of different ways you can do that, a lot of different ways I can show it, but that's a pretty powerful tool for offsetting a line, trying to figure out what those slopes are. In addition to that, with the offset command, let's say I take this same lot line here and I use the offset line, I can come in here and I can set a distance. So let's say we offset that 10 feet. So I'm going to pick the line. We're going to set the offset of 10. We're going to choose our right side. And then for our vertical offset, we can put in a slope value. So if I want that to be 2% at 10 feet, I can put that in, and when I press enter, it's going to offset that line at a 2% rather than a adjusted elevation. So it knows the distance, and then it figures out what the vertical offset should be. So if I do the same thing here and I say I do a 3-to-1 slope, it figures that out and offsets that line accordingly to 3-to-1 slope. So it's offsetting the line, not only just using the vertical distance, but also now you have the ability to, the ability to put in a slope or grade to offset that line vertically. We're going to switch over to another project to show these last couple features here. One of this feature now here under the drafting tab is the ability to come in here and create leader lines and scale bars. We'll take a look at the create leader lines. So I've got some text in here that's over my object and I want to leader it out. So if I select that object, I can choose leader with no arrow, with a line with arrow, or sorry, line with arrow, no arrow, with arrow, spline, or no arrow and with an arrow. So let's do the spline with arrow because that looks the best. We'll pick our label, which is piece of text, and we'll place it down over here, and you can see that it's creating the leader and splining it out. If I set this to display label horizontally and I grab this piece of text here, you can see that it rotates the label and makes the label horizontal to my object. Okay. Now once you have those, some of the properties of that as well, as I can come in and adjust those. So if I go to properties here, you can see that I can adjust the justification. So I can say bottom fit, I can go bottom base middle, bottom middle. I can change the justification to top right. So again, configure that leader label any way that I would like to see it. Then the last one is a scale bar. So this one works with your Dynaviews. So if you've got some plan sets set up here, like I got some plan and profiles and I want to put a scale bar in here, I simply click on create scale bar and come in here and set some of my settings. So you can set the bar height, the number of divisions, the number of units to the left and right, and the text size for that information. So let's go ahead and pick the Dynaview, and then you can see we can place that scale bar in, and it uses the settings that are configured for the number of divisions on both sides and the spacing. So if I was to select it and go to properties, I could come in here and change some of these divisions. So on the left I've got 8, maybe I want that 5, and then maybe I want this to be 25. So I can do something like that, or I can make this 10 and make this 50. All right, so I can change those. And then we've got our grips that I can move this guy over. So that's some of the new features in Trimble Business Center Heavy Construction Edition 3.6. To learn more, contact your local SciTech dealer.